Nice to see you, thank you. The nearer the fountain, more pure the stream flows. This line is taken from a poem by John Clare. Have been his writings a kind of spiritual guidance for this record?
I've had an anthology of his work for many, many years. It was something my mum gave me when I was younger. I think he sort of, along with William Blake, sort of represents that sort of earthy, ethereal, English kind of melancholy. Interesting guy, really. He was like one of the first working class poets. He suffered from quite severe mental health issues, and in fact kind of went into sort of retreat for 15 years or something like that, I think it was. So, interesting guy, really, especially at a time when, you know, really writing poetry was the reserve of the wealthier classes. Yeah, I was, and he spent time in Essex, where I grew up. So he's been a companion. But that line, "the nearer the fountain, more pure the stream flows," I'd sort of taken that out of the original poem many years ago, and I just had it. It was something that really kind of haunted me. And when I started doing this project up in Iceland, which ultimately led to this album, I used that as the working title. And it was only really towards the end when I started thinking, well, I'm going to write some songs for this project, that I went back to the original poem, Love and Memory, and realised that it actually said a lot more to me about where I was at that moment in time than I'd previously imagined it would. So I kind of used that as a beginning, you know, to the whole record. The metre of it sets the sort of pace for the record, I think.
And what did you have in mind? What was your idea, your goal, when you had these early workshop sessions in Iceland?
It was something that had come about from an offer from my friend Mark Cardinal. He said, I want to commission you to do whatever you want, completely clean canvas. And I thought about it, and I realised there was something very particular I wanted to do, which was invite orchestral musicians to sit in my front room and look out my window and see if we could just play the landscape, you know, simply. It's a very dynamic, beautiful view I have. I have directly in front of my window kind of scrubland, and then there's a little links golf course, very small, and then there's the sea and the beach, and then there's a little island, and then a bit further out to sea there's a huge mountain range, and then behind that there's an even grander glacier and volcano. So it develops beautifully, you know, and as a passage for the eye, and you know, that to translate that into music, I thought was an interesting challenge. And I mean, it's always slightly problematic when you present classical musicians with nothing at all, no written music. You know, they're always somewhat sceptical. But over a period of 3 workshops, I think we established an understanding, and yeah, we ultimately were just all staring out the window, so playing music.
Live from a window, as in a Paul Weller song.
Live from a window, yeah, but also a very, as I said, a very dynamic, ever-changing landscape, and also kind of signifiers to where we find ourselves currently with the climate, with the receding glacier, which I've watched over the last 20 years get noticeably smaller during the summer. So that in mind, and you know, the volume of rain in relation to snow is different now. There's more rain. Yeah, so it's a place to contemplate the future as well, you know.
And then came the pandemic, the lockdown, also the loss of Tony Allen, all things which totally twist your the plan you had.
My experience was like, you know, individual to me, but obviously comparable to everyone else's, in the sense that life stops abruptly, and we had to kind of sort of, in a way, reimagine who we were and where we were going. And I continued doing what I always do, which is work with music, and yeah.
But you had to turn the orchestral ideas into more formal songs?
Yeah, well, all I had was a recording of the rehearsals, just from one mic, just a reference, really. So I couldn't really do much with it other than this is what it was. So I couldn't develop it fully. So I kind of used it as atmospherics, really, and sort of developed the ideas that had been discussed and thought about while we were doing the workshops. And then, yeah, I turned all of that atmosphere into song, which was not what my first intention. It was originally just going to be an orchestral thing, but I sort of translated those thoughts into words.
Do you still care about pop music? I mean, in the 21st century way?
Yeah, I mean, I listen to it all the time. Sometimes it kind of appalls me, and sometimes I think, oh, that's really clever, and that inspires me, you know. But I think that's always been the same, pop music. I mean, you know, things have changed dramatically, and the emergence of TikTok and that, it's interesting what will ultimately manifest it out of that. But it seems like it's also quite a good conduit for bringing back kind of forgotten music as well. You know, if something becomes popular on TikTok, doesn't matter where it comes. I mean, it's supremely eclectic as well. So, you know, in that sense, I embrace it.
And back in Devon, how came the idea to use all those old instruments from the 50s?
Well, that was a choice I made. I mean, it's slightly foolhardy in the sense that those instruments don't really work properly when they're in a cold, damp environment, which is where they were, because we were all recording in an old stone barn. But luckily I had a very talented technician who could get up in the morning and fix them before we started work, so at least they'd last. But you know, sometimes you'd be playing and then they'd just literally explode.
Do you have the feeling that with this record you went through not another winter of discontent, but through dark days, dark times?
Well, I was just existing in the same way everyone else was, you know, unsure of what was going to happen next, concerned about my family and my friends, and, you know, prepared in a way for the worst, you know. And there were times that were very sad and shocking during that period. But I think, you know, ultimately, for me, it wasn't a terrible time, because I kind of sort of had a chance to slow down a bit. I mean, my life's been pretty frenetic for the last 30 years, so I spent a lot, you know, I swam every day in the sea, I cooked every day, yeah, read, watched Netflix, slept a lot more, maybe. Yeah, it was a healthy, kind of reflective time, and very creative as well.
You've been traveling around the world. What's the most important for you? Discovering new landscape, new countries, or being able to travel in your mind, in your memories?
Well, the absence of travel made it necessary to travel in a different way, and some of the songs on this record are kind of me returning to places that, you know, continually haunt me, like Montevideo and Iran, to be specific.
This album has your name on the cover. Does it make such a difference with your other records?
Well, I kind of sort of seem to fit solo records in when I'm in between other stuff. I don't plan them. It's a very arbitrary kind of discography with me. It's sort of what it's like. I don't know. I have a vague idea of what I'm doing next year, but it's not particularly planned. So I didn't plan this record. You know, in fact, it wasn't even meant to be a solo record. It was an orchestral collaboration. It's just circumstance led me this way.
Looking at the cover, there's the huge stone masking the sea. Is it a kind of metaphor for the day we were in?
I think you could be interpreted like that. I mean, I've known that big rock for a very long time, and you know, and of course, on the little beach that it's on, all you have to do is just walk one to the right or the left, and then your view isn't obscured. But then in the picture, it does kind of represent, yeah.
You've started to work on a new Gorillaz album.
Well, it's not really it's not an album. It's the same thing as I did last year with Song Machine. It's just more episodes of that. You know, making a film with Netflix as well. So that's kind of where our main energy has been focused.
So the idea of albums, LPs nowadays, it's kind of useless, or?
Well, no, I'm just made an album. It's just, you know, I'm lucky in the sense that I don't have to do anything in a particular way at any time, and you know, sometimes it's the perfect place to present your work, and sometimes it's kind of a bit redundant. So I think horses for courses, as they say.